It sounds to me like here's the plan. Let me get a bunch of people to think that we're friends and we're just hanging out, and I'll ask them for money. And they'll feel like, hey, we're friends and I'm just helping a friend out.
Welcome to the Ethics in Video Games podcast, where we explore issues at the intersection of ethics and video games. We look at controversial ethical issues about video games, like what should be censored. In video games, what counts as cheating? And in video game design, what makes a game morally interesting? You can subscribe and listen to all of our episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find us spreading ideas about ethics in video games on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you like what we're doing, give us a review on your favorite podcast app. And if you want to help us with our mission, you can sign up for one-time or monthly donation on either our website or through the link in the episode notes wherever you listen to the podcast. And thanks for listening. Making money playing games on Twitch or YouTube sounds like a dream come true, but money never comes without strings attached. Streamers face pressures to build their audience, ask for financial support, land and keep sponsors. It's hard work and many burn out. Meanwhile, there's questions about the way Twitch and YouTube benefit from their labor. What are the ethics of making money playing games on Twitch or YouTube?
Hi, I'm Shlomo Sher, philosophy professor and video game ethicist.
And hi, I'm Andy Ashcraft. I am a video game designer.
All right, let's play.
Welcome, everybody. We're here back again with Dr. Mark R. Johnson, lecturer in digital cultures in the Department of Media and Communications at the University of Sydney. His research focuses on game live streaming and Twitch TV, which is the stuff we're talking about today. Also, esports, gamification, which is our previous episode with him. If you haven't heard that, it's really great. Go back and check it out. He's published in journals including Information Communication Society, New Media and Society, Media Culture and Society, lots of society stuff, and games and culture. Outside academia is also known as an independent game designer, best known for the roguelike Ultima Ratio Regum. All right, Mark Johnson, welcome back to the show. Yeah.
Hi there, guys. Thank you so much for having me back again. It's great to be back.
All right. Okay, so our conversation here is also about money, but very different than last time, right? Last time we talked gambling. Now we're talking, really, let's say we're focusing on Twitch. And, lots of people dream of making money and becoming famous influencers on Twitch, right? I remember my nephew was one of them. Right. You play video games that you love and you say what you think about them and you chat with fans and you make money at the same time. I mean, it just sounds like a dream come true. Right. But it obviously is much more complicated than that. And today we're going to focus on some of the ethical issues that come up for people who decide to take this route. Now, can you start by painting us a picture of what actually needs to happen for a Twitch or YouTube streamer to make real money? Right. And I'm assuming it's a lot more complicated than I think.
Yeah. So I guess in both cases, in part, it comes down to just how many people watch your channel. Like, I think that's the first thing to kind of pin down, that although there's no formal size beneath which you can't make a living or above which you are guaranteed to make a living, it's hard to make a living from these things unless you have a certain sort of critical mass or a certain kind of volume of people who are watching you. Although this does differ across YouTube and Twitch, and this is because of the different ways in which a person can make money on those. As on YouTube, in general, one is making money through adverts, through running ads at the start of one's videos, and also through having sponsors. As I'm sure we've all seen, like lots of YouTube videos these days from gaming content creators will have a short kind of sponsorship section by Nord. VPN is quite a common one these days, or it'll be from a game company, or it'll be from Red Bull or some energy drink, these sorts of things. And also sometimes, of course, in both cases, you'll find people who are specifically sponsored to play a given game. So a new game's come out, and the company who made that game, they will reach out to a bunch of well-known streamers, either who are well-known in general, or who are well-known for playing that particular style of game or that genre and so on. And they'll pay them some ambiguous, unknown amount of money in general for broadcasting their game. Whereas on Twitch, unlike YouTube, where most of the income comes from sponsorships or from adverts, on Twitch, it's more from viewers directly donating to the channel, either through subscriptions, which is where you agree to pay a given amount of money every month to that streamer, in general $5, some of which goes to Twitch and some of which goes to the streamer, or through donations, where you donate a given amount of money as a one-off, in which case most of that goes to the streamer. And a small amount goes to Twitch. So in both cases, if you don't have enough people either to be giving you that kind of money on Twitch or to be watching a broadcast which has been sponsored or which has an advert in it on YouTube, then it's going to be hard to make much money from this. It does differ, though, based on based on person to person on YouTube and Twitch, as what country and city you're based in will shape how much money do you need to make a living from this, of course, right? If you live in the middle of London or Sydney or Hong Kong or somewhere, then clearly you need a lot of money to be making a full-time living on this. If you live in a far less wealthy country and maybe you live in a rural rather than an urban space, then you need far less money, of course. So those are the kind of basic dynamics of making money here, but it doesn't always come down to volume of viewers. If you're on Twitch, for instance, you can find people who maybe only have 500 average viewers, but they make a full-time living because their viewers are super engaged and that streamer has gone to a lot of kind of effort to get those viewers excuse me, to financially support them. Whereas you might also find a streamer with 5,000 viewers on average who doesn't make a living on Twitch. So although it would be hard to make a living from one viewer or 5 viewers, I don't think that there's kind of a hard cutoff of where you can and can't make money from. A lot of it comes down to what's that streamer or that YouTuber trying to do, to what extent are they trying to monetize their broadcasts, and kind of how do their viewers feel about either giving money to that streamer or what that streamer is doing on YouTube to make money.
So we got essentially, you need to think about the number of viewers you're going to get. You need to think about the level of engagement that you can get them in. There's the possibility of advertising on YouTube and sponsorship, right? So it's these 4 things are kind of your main concerns.
Yeah,
I
think so.
suspect the advertising and the sponsorship also is based on your viewership, right? So right. Right.
Let me start with this. In most jobs, the relationship between your labor and other people is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, you have a boss, your boss assigns you work, make sure you deliver to the company or for the company, which then uses it as a part of providing product or services, right? And if you own a traditional business, you have relationships with employees and customers, suppliers, maybe your local community. What relationships does a streamer need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of kind of discussion around this, and quite a lot of the use of the phrase parasocial relationships, which in the context of Twitch and YouTube tends to be used to denote this idea that the viewer kind of perceives the streamer or YouTuber to be a friend rather than to be a kind of distant celebrity in some sense. So these are relationships, so the thinking goes, where people have this sense that they're kind of hanging out with a friend playing games, rather than this being something where it's a bit more distant, where this is someone who they don't know that well. And YouTubers and Twitch streamers who want to try to make money or want to try to do this full time and so on, in general do try quite hard to cultivate that sense that we're all kind of just a bunch of friends hanging out playing games. And this can create some awkward encounters, like back in 2015, 2016, 2017, when I started doing Twitch research at TwitchCon, which is the yearly kind of big Twitch convention, conference, event type thing, it was quite striking how you would see loads of viewers coming up to streamers, and the viewers would behave as if they were chatting to an old friend, and they'd say, "Hey Bob, it's great to see you. How's things? How's your cat doing? I hope your parents doing well with their cancer treatment," or whatever it might be, because that streamer had shared those things on Twitch. But to the streamer, they'd never met this person before in their entire life, and they had only ever encountered this person through their online username, of course. And even then, even if that person had said, "Oh, yeah, my online name is JoeBlogs85," even then, there's no guarantee the streamer would recognize that name, even if that's someone who gives the money and who's engaged in their channel and so on.
Especially if I got thousands of viewers.
Exactly. And kind of different streamers definitely vary in the extent to which they, sort of, to be crude about it, they bother to remember their fans' names, in essence. You get some streamers and some YouTubers who definitely put in a real effort to remember the, say, 100 or 200 most active people in their channels, and they'll respond in kind of particular ways when those people show up in their broadcasts, and often that might extend to, for instance, following that person on Twitter, or even playing games with those viewers. But other people don't really go with that model, and when someone gives the money or when someone rejoins their channel, they'll say, "Hi, thanks for the subscription, welcome back." But there's no real sense that even if someone has renewed their subscription for the 82nd time, there's no sense that the streamer necessarily remembered their name from the past 81 times it's come up on channel.
Right. I was going to say, this all sounds very, very familiar to me as the husband to a stand-up comic.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what
this
in
is
what way?
very, very, very similar to Jackie's relationship with her fans. My question, I wonder, because there's another similarity between people who are streaming things in real time, right? And the similarity there is, going to shows and seeing comedy in real time versus watching videos of a game in play or a video of stand-up comedy. I wonder if that synchronicity is important here.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I've in fact just had a paper published on how Twitch streamers use humor and jokes and wit as part of how they engage people in their channel. In fact, yeah, I think there's a very strong overlap there in that a lot of the most successful streamers, far less the YouTubers, as they tend to be pre-recorded, of course, but the most successful streamers are very good at trying to engage a crowd, at being witty, at being funny, at being able to make jokes. Often these jokes kind of riff off what's going on in that game, of course. One thing I talked about in this paper is how lots of Twitch game streamers, they kind of struggle to allow serious content in games to be serious, and instead use it to riff off, to make jokes, to make humor. And that's quite a kind of well seen thing, I think. But also, some of my earlier research on Twitch showed that lots of streamers will try to prepare jokes off stream before they go live, and then try to work those into their broadcasts. And that again has this kind of obvious parallel, I think, where, although they are live, and although a lot of the appeal of watching a game streamer on Twitch is in that liveness, that you as the viewer are experiencing what's going on in this game for the first time ever, just like the streamer is, the streamer is doing far more off stream to prep, to think of jokes, to think of how the stream will go, to think, okay, I'll do 2 hours of this, then take a break, then do 3 hours of this, then take a break, and then maybe I'll do X and then Y and then Z, and then maybe encourage people to go onto my Discord or to follow me on Twitter, and then I'll close the broadcast, that type of thing. So it's liveness, but it's planned.
Let's get into some of the ethics here. I mean, we have a lot. I have like a million questions on this, but here's part of what I'm hearing. And Andy, I don't know if this is analogous to Jackie's stand-up relationship with her fans, but it sounds to me like, here's the plan. Let me get a bunch of people to think that we're friends and we're just hanging out. And I'll ask them for money. And they'll feel like, hey, we're friends, and I'm just helping a friend out.
It is. Yeah, both on Twitch and on YouTube. The normal thing is for a streamer/YouTuber to kind of report to potential sponsors. I get an average of X people in hours ABC. My peak is Y, and sometimes Z people will click on links I give them. That type of stuff. Yeah. Genuinely do try to forge friendships and genuinely do appreciate the fact that having 1,000 people who each occasionally give you a bit of cash means that when brought together you can do this as your job and so on. That's definitely the case, and some of these streamers do kind of go above and beyond in some sense. Like some will host in-person meetups, for instance, where they'll be going to City X, and when they are in City X, they'll say, hey, anyone who lives here or in the kind of local region who watches my channel, let's all go out and get dinner and meet each other in person and so on. And the fact that very few streamers do that, I think, highlights that the few who do that are doing it, I think, for fairly genuine reasons, I think. But then at the kind of extreme other end, I mean, there's definitely a sense that for some streamers, this is a fairly sort of cynical performance, I think would be the phrase to use, and that they are exploiting, I think, is too harsh and too strong, but they are definitely kind of taking full advantage of how a site like Twitch simultaneously makes someone appear to be a kind of exciting online celebrity, but also a close friend who you're hanging out with and playing games with. And I think that Twitch and YouTube less so, but Twitch runs that full spectrum of what people are doing as well. I think we need to keep in mind how lots of people will, both streamers and viewers, will share quite private things about their lives as well. And again, that complicates, is this a genuine attempt to reach out and to form bonds, or this more kind of instrumental goal, as streamers might, for instance, share that a family member's very, very ill, for instance, and then you will see viewers who maybe have also had a family member with that same thing, who will say, yeah, I had that, or I'm going through that now, and they'll talk it through and they'll share it. Or you'll have, for instance, streamers who will talk about their experiences with going to college, or their experiences with previous jobs, or their pets, or their friendships, these sorts of things, and viewers will respond with those. And generally when viewers respond after a streamer has prompted them, that tends to get a fairly positive response from a streamer. But another thing you see is when a viewer will, say, donate a bunch of cash, and they'll say, thank you so much for your channels. My father just died. He was my closest friend. Your channel's been a huge help, keeping me going and helping me laugh in this hard time, and so on.
Yep.
And the streamers' responses to that tend to be quite complex, I think, as they tend to express sort of appreciation on some level that people are getting so much good from their channel, but also a lot of streamers have spoken out about this and said, I find it uncomfortable when someone says that to me, because they are kind of placing emotional responsibility on me for their emotional well-being in a very hard time, and I didn't know their father's just died, or whatever it might be. I don't know that I'm doing this, and they are kind of placing this tacit expectation on me that I'm now complicit in some sense in their mental health.
Wow. Interesting.
And that seems like honestly, it seems rather churlish to take somebody who is thanking you for basically doing what you're doing already, and saying, this is meaningful to me in this way, and then going, oh, I really wish you hadn't told me that.
A lot of viewers responded that way when a lot of streamers, I think this particularly happened a few months back. I think there were a lot of people lots of streamers on Twitter saying, I find it really uncomfortable when people say this stuff. A lot of viewers said, hang on, I'm giving you money, I'm enjoying your content, I'm saying you've helped me and been a positive role in my life. Why are you responding in this way to what I'm saying? Yeah.
It's really weird. I mean, to me, I mean, I agree. I think it's very rare for anybody to exploit. I mean, it's possible to exploit your fans, right? In any way, right? But I think it's extremely rare to do that. But anybody that has a voice that speaks to others has a responsibility for that voice, right? And if you're scared of that responsibility, even if the responsibility says you're doing great,
Right.
you're helping,
Yeah.
you're not really, to me, you're not really getting the fact that what you say always matters, to people, as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe you've hit the nail on the head there. Maybe the concern is now I'm not going to be allowed to say whatever I want to say because I might be doing the opposite with somebody. I might be making their day worse.
I guess, Mark, the question is, maybe the question to you is, what do you think about that? I mean, do you think that essentially, if you are streaming and you do have a substantial following, can you say whatever the fuck you want, or do you have some responsibilities in what you're saying?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it's interesting in this context, excuse me, to look at how some Twitch channels are moderated, as the specific streamer has a lot of control over what gets said in their channel, and kind of some are much stricter on how channels are moderated. Like some will, for instance, in some channels, you aren't allowed to say words like murder or words like suicide, even if it's said in a purely joking, game-focused context.
Okay.
Like, oh, the streamer just killed themselves, meaning they died by their own hand within the game, of course, right?
Right.
Stuff of that sort might be banned. Or in some channels, I've seen words like mad or insane or crazy are banned, and these sorts of things. And then at the other extreme, you have these so-called free speech channels. And given contemporary American politics right now, I'm sure we can all guess what those channels entail. And so the moderation of channels does vary a lot in terms of what streamers feel comfortable with their viewers saying. But in terms of what streamers say, again, you'll get some streamers who are either willing to push the boundaries of what's okay on Twitch, or at least who do so as part of their brand in some sense. There's definitely streamers who at least get some of their appeal from pushing what they're meant to be able to do or not do on Twitch. But then there's other people, generally people who have a more kind of social justice bent, or people who might be from more marginalized demographics, who are more cautious in what they say, and who are more kind of self-aware and self-reflexive in what they are saying and what effect that might be having on viewers. So again, I think Twitch streamers, and this is the case on YouTube as well, run this full spectrum in terms of what do the broadcasters say, what are their viewers allowed to say or expected to say. But I think you're right that for some streamers, they're definitely happy to take all the advantages of this work, but happy to kind of disown the disadvantages in some sense. They don't mind, of course, the fact that their viewers are giving them lots of money, but then when the viewers say, well, we expect X, Y, or Z in exchange, the streamer goes, well, I'm not so sure about that. I'm not sure. I'm not so happy about that. And that, I think, is a bit problematic for the people who behave in that way. But again, in the interest of trying to see both sides, streaming is still a fairly new job. People are still working out what the dynamics and what the ethics and what the expectations and the responsibilities of this work are. In turn, I mean, a lot of people doing this job are quite young, might not necessarily have had other jobs prior to streaming. So I think we should critique, but I think we also need to acknowledge that a lot of people doing this are not necessarily in a position to really kind of critically, morally, maybe completely reflect on these complexities and come to a kind of complex outcome of how they should be acting as well.
Right. Can I ask about, so in one hand, this could be applied to any sort of celebrityhood.
Right.
Right. It doesn't. This seems agnostic entirely to gaming. This is not something that is just the gaming community. Clearly, this is because we now have these social media tools to have this sort of connection with our fans that we didn't have before, assuming that we have fans. Hello, fans. We can have this connection. Before, we might be a celebrity because we're on television. We'd be a little bit more distant from the average everyday fan. I often talk to my students about, even books have a picture of the author on the book cover, on the book jacket. And that's because we want to know who this person is who's speaking to us, right? We sort of feel like we have this connection with this person. Like we're reading them, they're speaking to us directly.
Right. But obviously, with the kind of technological changes we have today and the back and forth you get in Twitch, obviously all social media influencers get they get feedback from people, but Twitch is live, right? And it's mostly used for gaming. And it's interesting when Mark says talk, of course they don't talk. Only the streamer gets to talk, right? Other people get to type, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not as asymmetrical as most celebrity fan relationships, but it's still very asymmetrical as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you've I think you've touched on my thoughts on this. I mean, I think you are completely right, Andy, that kind of this extends existing celebrity influence and so on dynamics. But I think, as you say, Shlomo, the fact that this is a live thing and that you are talking back and forth, I think that is very different from how we engage with most celebrities or people who are perceived as being celebrities. Even if it might not be a full dialogue, it's certainly much closer to than the monologue one gets when you follow Kanye West on Twitter and you just read what he's typed or something.
Right.
Because here there is some degree of back and forth, and that kind of dynamic of this person is simultaneously a kind of lofty, unreachable online celebrity, but also someone I can chat with. I think the fact that those two roles coexist in people on Twitch and to a less extent on YouTube, I think that's a really crucial aspect of the celebrity dynamic that's kind of going on here, that it feels like one is getting a far closer engagement. And I think it's also distinct in that you are giving money directly to the person, rather than say buying a product which has their brand on, and then some portion of that goes to that person, but that person doesn't know you bought their branded Nike shoes or whatever it might be, whereas this person does know your username just gave them $10 on Twitch, and they say, "Hey, JoeBlogs85, thank you so much for the $10." So I think it's not completely equal, but it's much closer, and it's not so far as to say it's a true dialogue, but it's definitely kind of somewhere in the spectrum between monologue and dialogue, much closer to dialogue than we get, I think, with any other celebrity context, I'd say.
This is why I think the responsibilities you have are greater. Right? Because you're creating a relationship that is, on the face of it, a lot more intimate and a lot more, relational in the sense that you expect a potential back and forth with it. I wanted to move on, but I wanted to ask really quick. When you talk about people moderating their channels, I mean, I'm assuming, number one, Twitch has certain, and I should have found out, but I'm assuming Twitch has certain rules about, various types of things. How does someone moderate their own channel? Does that mean you hire, or you have a friend that essentially moderates it? Or you're doing it as you're not doing it as you're playing and talking at the same time, I'm assuming. It's not.
No. I mean, Twitch has kind of many levels of how this stuff happens. So the first level is, Twitch has rules on what you can and can't say, can and can't do, both as streamer and as viewer. Those rules, as many have pointed out, are unevenly enforced in most cases, and in many ways tend to hit marginalized groups far more than others. But then also the individual streamer can kind of type up rules for their channel saying you can and can't say X and Y. Then in turn, there's also an automatic moderation thing on Twitch where if you type nasty keywords, Twitch will notice that and catch it and wipe those out. But also the streamer can set particular things which can and can't be said in the channel, both in terms of code as well as in terms of like writing rules for their channel. And then in turn, a streamer will in general try to find some moderators, which are people which are committed viewers who will be in their channel and have moderation powers to time out people or to ban people or to delete messages and so on from that channel. A few really successful streamers will pay their mods, but in general, it's unpaid labor. And the moderators tend to be, like I say, kind of really devoted, engaged, long-term fans of that channel. And one kind of intriguing ethical dynamic here is that becoming a moderator in the Twitch channel is seen as a reward for being a really engaged viewer. And I think it's intriguing that unpaid labor is seen as the reward for being really engaged in someone's channel. I just think that's an interesting dynamic we should look at. Yeah.
I mean, not all rewards are monetary, right? I mean, you're getting rewarded in status. Right.
Oh, exactly. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And you've earned the status of being the special super fan that gets to moderate the discussion. And
you have.
And it's interesting because, I mean, with you are getting power of some kind, right? And it's interesting also that the whole idea of all these options for moderation, I think I want to kind of emphasize, empower the streamer to exercise whatever kind of responsibility they feel to everybody, right? I mean, if you're trying to create a community where, we're all friends and we're hanging out, and obviously this may be so I can make money, but it also is, maybe just because I really enjoyed and I hope you guys do too. If trolls come and mess your time up and you even gave me money, right? I mean, it's easy to feel responsible, I think, in those cases to protect your supporters.
I agree. Just as a final note on this, one kind of funny trend in the last year or so is that when people have been banned from someone's channel, streamers have now made it, some streamers have now made it part of their content to go through the people who've been banned and to read out their requests to be unbanned. And that itself has become a source of kind of content and kind of comic material to read why people were banned and what they're saying as to why they should be unbanned. I'm not sure what to make of that yet. I think it's kind of interesting and quite ethically complex, but I'm not sure what to make of that now.
Andy, do you want to hit that? Because let's talk about that. So to me, it's kind of interesting. Because so many. You remember when we talked about when platforms ban video games, right? And how a platform will ban a video game and not really tell you why it's banned, right? And there are potential reasons for that, and they don't want to get into that. But it's so frustrating to be banned for something and not be given any justification for this. And it's kind of, on the one hand, you could be mocking those people, all right, in a way that might be really unfair. Not only did they get banned without explanation, and now you're just mocking them publicly. On the other hand, maybe you're being transparent and thinking through and asking the fans themselves what they think about it, and that's cool.
Yeah, I've seen the full range of this. Yeah, from folks just kind of making fun of people who've been banned in their channel to people saying, yeah, let's kind of seriously look at what this person did and what do you, my viewers, think should be done with this person and so on. Yeah, there's a full range on these things. Yeah.
All right, let's move now to sponsorships. Right, sponsorships. I mean, it seems to me they can be just incredibly profitable for players. Right, I mean for streamers. Right?
Definitely.
Right. But they can also turn you into a shield. Sorry, not a shield. A shill. A shill or shield? Jesus.
Shill, yeah.
Shill, right?
I think, yeah.
Right. And a shill, essentially, somebody will, all they're doing is saying what they're paid to be saying, right? So what sort of ethical issues do you think come up when a streamer is considering who their sponsor would be and how to present their product or service?
I think here we have to start a few years back when the idea of acknowledging a sponsor first came into being, because there was a period on Twitch and YouTube where streamers were not considered to be ethically required to announce sponsors. So someone could be paying you X money to play game Y, and you play game Y, and people were not considered to be obliged to say, hey, company Z is paying me X dollars to play game Y. And then quite quickly, over kind of maybe a 3 or 6 month period, this went through a real kind of sea change towards now you absolutely must, no matter what, if you're on Twitch or YouTube, acknowledge you've been sponsored to play this game. You don't have to say how much, you don't have to say like what the requirements of that deal might be, but you have to say this.
Oh, okay. So first of all, is this was this a change in norms or was this a change in platform policy?
Yeah, I very much see this as being a change in norms. With that said, I haven't studied this exact change fully, and maybe if I did, there would be aspects of both. But my perception as someone researching game streaming when this change happened, my perception back then was this was far more a change in norms than a change in platform rules. Was my sense back then? Yeah.
So let's take a minute just to say, why do you think? What is it that people saw that was wrong with essentially promoting products that your fans didn't know you were being paid for?
To be honest, without going back and researching this exact moment, I'm not completely sure what caused this shift. I think I can quickly though point to like a few potential things. I think one was when more and more people were making money from this practice, and also when more and more people were sort of having what they do be interrogated might be too strong, but more and more people were paying attention to what the streamers do, what the YouTube gamers do. I think some of them probably felt this sense of, okay, I do need to be a bit more transparent, a bit more on the kind of level here. I think that was probably one thing. I think also, again, thinking back to what I perceived at that time, researching game streams in general, I think I also perceived a sense that there was a kind of authenticity crisis at this point, where viewers were feeling, I'm no longer sure that I know whether the streamer's playing this game because they want to, whatever that means in the context of making money and so on, but I'm not sure whether this person's playing this because they want to, in air quotes, or because they are being paid to. So I think that was a factor as well.
Notice this last point. On the first point, it's we talked about potentially exploiting or let's say manipulating, right? If you're a shill, right? If I trust you that this is your honest opinion, and you're essentially deceiving me because you're just saying what you're saying because it's not your honest opinion, but instead you're getting money. Now we are talking about I'm being manipulated, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's crucial because kind of a lot of what people are doing when they watch games, YouTube and games Twitch and so on, is that they are trying to judge, is this a game I like? Is this a game I should buy? Is this a game I want to play and so on? And a streamer's responses, one might think, are inevitably going to be modulated by, are they being paid for this? Because if someone sponsors them big money to play Game X, and then they say, well, Game X is a pile of shit, I can't stand it, it's awful, it's garbage, then sponsor Y a month later will look at their stream of Game X and see, oh, this other sister company paid this streamer big money to play this game, and the streamer said it was garbage. I don't think I'll pay this streamer to stream my game.
So we have a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
So on the one hand, right, you have essentially the product that you're sponsoring. On the other hand, you have the persona you're presenting to people as someone who they can trust, right, and is credible.
Yeah, I think trust is really key to this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is key to that relationship you called it the parasocial relationship, right? That when I like the people that I have, there are creators that I'm fans of, and I trust them to a degree to give them writers that I trust because I trust them to give me a great story when they've written it, actors that I trust because I trust them to give me a great performance. If my relationship went deeper where I felt like I had like one-to-one contact with them, which is what a lot of these things sort of start to feel like, right? When I'm following their Twitch or I'm following them on other social media, and especially if they respond to something that I have said, now I am in this sort of one-to-one, even though it's still a public performance.
Well, at the same thing, the second point that Mark said is, if the more this happens, the more, and this is why I think might have been a really important thing for this to become a norm, because the more shills you have, the more you're likely to take the whole industry down, right? No one will trust streamers, period, right? None of this can work. No one will trust anybody else. You're ruining it for everybody.
Yeah. And kind of one intriguing thing now, I think, a few years after this norm of you must say if a game is sponsored came in, is that we see a range of different kind of strategic responses from streamers to how to deal with this, because often sponsored streams tend to get very low viewer counts compared to non-sponsored streams, and YouTube gaming videos which explicitly announce that this game was sponsored by the people who made this game, again, also tend to get far low reviews. Like for instance, one streamer who I follow generally broadcasts one game, but they sometimes do a sponsored game within that same genre, and on YouTube the sponsored videos get maybe a third of the views, or maybe as little as a quarter of the views as their main game does. So to respond to this, we've seen kind of quite a range of tactics. One I've seen is just to do the sponsored videos or streams, accept that they get fewer viewers, and what you're doing there is, rather than getting money from viewers, you're getting money from the sponsor, and you just accept that that's just what it'll be. But others, for instance, I've seen some who do this thing where on every video they put a notice just saying, please watch this on the understanding this game might have been sponsored, which is a kind of intriguing response to not say, like, any game I play might be sponsored or not, and you watch on that basis.
What do you think of that response? I'm just kind of curious. I mean, the first response is straightforward, right, and tells us. The second intentionally puts ambiguity in there. Is that a problem or not, as far as you guys are concerned?
I think that's a really complex one. I think it's good on one level that they are kind of tacitly acknowledging that they are presumably actively pursuing sponsors and that many of their streams will be sponsored and so on. On the other hand, though, I think in a weird way, by saying any stream might have been sponsored, you're re-muddying the waters of truthfulness again, I think, potentially. But I think also for the streamer, I think this kind of potentially allows them, in some sense, to maybe be more truthful, where if from the viewer's point of view, they don't know whether something's sponsored or not, in a certain weird sense, I think that frees up the streamer to be complimentary or to be insulting to any game, because from the viewer's point of view, it breaks the association between what is the game's origin and what does the streamer think. And I wouldn't be surprised if games companies who sponsor, and I have no data on this, but this is just my anecdotal thoughts, I wouldn't be surprised if companies thinking of sponsoring a streamer or a YouTube gamer, I wouldn't be surprised if they look quite well on that approach, and that they actively don't want the streamer to explicitly say this stream was sponsored, but to just note that some of their streams are sponsored, and then their broadcast goes into it.
Right, but if let's say, Rockstar's paying me to play GTA, and I trash GTA, I'm assuming the same problems that existed before are still going to be there, right?
I think so. I do think so, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's slightly lower in that context than in others. Maybe only by a tiny little bit, but there's not really much research yet, sadly, on like how do sponsors engage with streamers. There's quite a bit about how streamers engage with sponsors, and some of my work has touched on this, but what's going on kind of behind closed doors at, as you say, Rockstar, I think is less clear. And as I've heard some streamers, when kind of questioned on the, like, can you be truthful when you play a sponsored game question?
No, you can't. I mean, it seems pretty obvious that you can't.
Well, a lot of streamers will say, I will always be truthful, I will always be frank, regardless of whether I'm being paid to do a game or not, whether that is true, or whether they at least perceive that to be true. I think is a more complex question, and I've seen some streamers say like there's no such thing as bad press. They'll bring up that concept and say they think it doesn't matter that much if they don't like a game that much on stream that's being sponsored, because maybe a viewer does like that game, which is an interesting justification, but I'm not sure it convinces me, given that streamers and YouTube gamers are tastemakers in some sense and are shaping what do their viewers think about these games. Yeah.
I remember, Andy, we were having a conversation with John Platten. And remember, and he said, if I was going to do marketing for a game now, I would literally take all my money and use it to sponsor, to have, influencers sponsor them to play my game.
Oh, yeah. And we see this in board games too. There's a bunch of channels of people who review board games. And some of them charge money to review your board game. You pay them to review your board game.
Interesting. That's interesting. I didn't know that those exist. That's an interesting and quite different dynamic, because it's kind of this explicit review rather than interesting.
And the idea is that they can review it, poorly or well. They might give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but if you've paid for it, are they more likely to give it a thumbs up? Can you trust them if you don't know whether or not you've paid for the review has been paid for or not?
Right.
What I think blurs this, on YouTube and on Twitch, is that streamers aren't giving explicit reviews. They are like,
well, they say if they're saying that they hate a game.
Exactly. Kind of the review is, or I think we imagine a review to be a kind of very particular genre of writing, or a very particular genre of speaking, writing, whatever it might be. But I think on both YouTube and on Twitch, people still exist in this kind of ambiguous zone where they don't have the formal trappings of what we traditionally associate with a review, even though what they are doing serves a similar role.
It's also interesting, right? So if I'm reviewing your board game, right, I'm going to take the reviewer hat and I'm going to think of, what's my conclusion? What's the point? If you're streaming a game and you might think, oh, this is so cool. This is cool. This part's not that cool, right? In some way, maybe you're like playtesting it in some sense.
Yeah.
Not to see if it works, but see if it's fun, if it works for you.
Yeah, it's more of a kind of stream of consciousness feedback than a review you'd read on PC Gamer or something, where someone has played game, sat down, marshaled their thoughts, tried to structure these, tried to get these across to the reader. It's more this stream of consciousness, this kind of ongoing iterative comments on what they think of this game. And some of this, of course, also, which further, I think, blurs the quasi-reviewing role here, is that not all of this is even spoken. It's in the body language of the person broadcasting. Right. It's in how often do they laugh, how often do they swear, how often do they pass comments, how often do they take a pause and talk to their viewers. Like, these more kind of subtle things, I think, also contribute to conveying to the viewer, is the streamer engaged in this game? Do they think this game's a good time or not?
Right.
Right.
But it is and that way it is very much a review.
Well, but still, it's really, I think of all the YouTubers I've seen that essentially are like, push the product, right? And then it's really easy. Like, this thing is great. Here's how it works. They're paying me for it, but I love it, and I've used it before they paid me, right? They say stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, the stream of consciousness is really, to me, it's interesting. It's substantially different. Here's how
it's certainly meant to feel more authentic, right?
Right, but it's
still
also a lot more. Right, but the performance can still. You're right. I mean, look, the performance I think would still be affected, so it's more positive than negative, right? But at least it's not as conclusively. This is great. You buy the product. But yeah,
I'm not convinced. I am unconvinced. I'm trying to imagine a world where I would listen to a news program on a radio that didn't say, "Oh, by the way, this is a sponsor for our station. In journalism, this is required.
Right, but in journalism, the stakes are really high. Right? If I'm playing GTA 6 and you paid me to play GTA 6, are the stakes real high? And
yes, of course they are. We're selling millions of dollars worth of game time.
Yes, and that's our high stakes.
I mean, this money is coming from marketing departments. These sponsorships are being paid for by marketing departments. If this is not a marketing bonus, they won't do it. If this is not a benefit to marketing the game, that's not going to happen. There's an expectation. If I'm a marketer and I'm paying for a sponsorship,
you're expecting a return.
I'm expecting a return.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't mean to take a hard line, position on this at all. Right. I'm more in agreement with you than disagreement, to be honest, right? Mark, beside the issues we talked about, is there anything else about sponsorship that you think might be ethically questionable? The pursuit of sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of covered the questions about disclosure, questions about how it changes with the content of that stream, about how viewers perceive what's going on and so on. It's not exactly sponsorship, but a kind of intriguing case study of this, which is kind of tangentially related, which I think is just worth expressing because it's ethically complex and it's interesting, I think, is that we've recently seen an emergence of an idea that streamers might in fact harm some games when they stream them. They might harm the chance for their game to be bought and make money. And this discourse tends to come up with games which are generally fairly short, fairly linear, and single player and story heavy. So this might mean, for instance, lots of indie games where there's a single plot, a single tale, where a lot of the excitement and interest in that game is in maybe making sense of that story or playing through it or gaining emotional association with its characters, things of this sort. And we've seen a few now, I think, companies making these sorts of games who said, please don't stream my entire game because my whole game is playing the game through once. That's what my game is. It's not a multiplayer game. It's not a game where you do many runs of this game. It's not a game with procedural content, perhaps. It's a single one-off focused story-driven experience. And if you stream the entire game, everyone gets the entire game for free without paying for it, which is not like if you're streaming League of Legends, as every match is new and fresh and so on. And so you can watch 1,000 games of League and then go and play League, and your game of League will be unlike every game you've watched. So that's quite a kind of intriguing ethical one, I think, and that's something which we've only seen, I feel, within the last. Well, COVID has warped my sense of time, but I think within the last year and a half is when I first started to see this idea come up.
That's interesting. I'm thinking of, you have the responsibility, obviously, to the developers of this game, especially if it's an indie game. I'm also thinking about how, you're ruining it for the players. Especially if I'm going back to the idea of, it's hard to do these things seriously. And the power of stories is, usually you got to take it seriously to get the power of the story. Maybe you'll have a fun story, but I think, most of the really effective, powerful stories are not just fun. Right? And it's hard to be able to get the impact. It's not just that you're copying, let's say, the product in some way, right? You're ruining it for people.
Yeah. We definitely, I think, need some more research on like the streaming of niche games, the streaming of indie games, how these devs respond. As far as I know of only 2 papers on this. One that I wrote a few years back about like how Twitch was affecting game advertising and game viewing and so on, and a more recent piece by Phelan Parker and Matthew Perks, which talked about kind of how indie devs are responding to Twitch and YouTube and kind of thinking about these sorts of things. But we definitely could do with more, I think, exploring, how do indie devs respond to this? And if if 10,000 people watch a full playthrough of a story-driven game, how many go and buy it at the end of it? And is the stream truly advertising that game or supporting that game by giving it publicity and visibility, or is it harming it because now everyone's seen what the game is? Yeah.
So are these rules that journalism has already sort of sorted out? Like, for example, on YouTube, if you make there's a big genre of reaction videos. I point the camera at me. I'm reacting to a video that I'm watching. It's a brand new video from my favorite star, my favorite celebrity singer, and you get to hear the music. Maybe there's even a little inset of the video that I'm watching, and then you get to watch me watch it. There's rules on YouTube about how much of that you can do. Like,
really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to periodically stop the music and actually just talk about it. At which point you're becoming, now you're providing analysis and response.
I see. Otherwise, you're taking viewers from watching the video itself.
Right. And that makes it journalism.
I was thinking you were going to go to other plot ruining thing like the movie, right?
And journalists have sorted that out too, right? When movie reviewers or television reviewers review, they can talk about whether they like it and what things they like about it, and they'll be very, very careful about spoilering things.
Right. Otherwise, they're giving people a reason not to go see the movie.
Right.
Right.
Or just ruining their experience of it.
Mark, I want to move on. Oh my God, I'm looking at the questions that I have, and I have so many more. But I'm going to try to. For many streamers, the dream is to become a celebrity streamer and influencer, right? I mean, what ethical issues come up for streamers? Let's say when they get there, they became a celebrity, but people's attention is super fleeting, right? They're trying to stay a celebrity. Does anything interesting happen there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely worth starting that by noting, of course, that a lot of Twitch people and YouTube games people, of course, don't aspire to this top level. Loads do, including many thousands who don't make it, in air quotes. But many people don't, of course. But for those who do, and once they make it, I think a lot of the issues, once you've, in air quotes, made it, are essentially the ones which we've already talked through, which are how do I respond to my fans and my viewers? How do I behave ethically towards them? I think also, of course, as you get bigger, more ethical issues come in, because if you're streaming to one person at one time, no one is going to sponsor you. If you have 10,000, then sponsors come in and so on. So some of those sorts of issues do kind of inevitably only come with the size and the reach and the impact and so on of your channel, whether it's on YouTube or on Twitch. But I think one thing that I'd point to here is the labor question, as a lot of my earliest work on Twitch looked at the kind of labor of being a Twitch streamer, especially being an, in air quotes, successful Twitch streamer, as this is a very demanding job. It's very demanding in terms of how many hours a day you stream in most cases, and that's very emotionally and mentally draining work, because you are on air for maybe 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And that's a huge thing in terms of kind of
so much
self-manage. Yeah. When it comes to like managing yourself and how you present and what you say, and making sure not to say something you shouldn't say, and making sure that you like keep with whatever streamer persona, as my colleague Nathan Jackson has done some research on would say, this is hugely demanding. And then there's so much off stream or off camera work in prepping for streams, responding to emails, dealing with your Discord channel, posting things on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, blah blah blah. There's so much work. It's an incredibly demanding space labor wise, and I think that stands out as the key ethical issue. And lots of successful money making streamers have reported burnout, depression, anxiety, these sorts of things as a result of, at least in part, their success on Twitch.
Do they spend that much time and effort because that's what That's what other people are doing and they have to remain competitive? Or what has caused them to spend that much effort and time?
I think there's three things. Firstly, it's a perception that they need to in order to maintain their position, to maintain income. I think secondly, there's also a sense there's definitely a keeping up with the Joneses aspect of, if other people are putting in these hours, then I feel kind of obliged to do this as well. And I think there's a third aspect, which is that Twitch and YouTube as well are often framed for people who either want to make money or are making money as these kind of exemplary neoliberal entrepreneurial spaces where there's this cultural sense of the harder I work, the better I'll do. And
right.
don't get me wrong, there is some truth in that without a doubt. But that's more because of how these platforms and how these cultures are structured than any kind of inherent truth. But if you want to try to make a living on Twitch, yeah, if you stream 8 hours a day every day of the week, you are more likely to make it than if you stream for half an hour once a month, of course. But that takes on a discursive role as well as a pragmatic role, I think is the thing, yeah.
I want to talk about the when we talk about labor, right? The platforms themselves. How do Twitch and YouTube benefit from the labor of game streamers? And is there anything that we need to think about when it comes to that relationship? Is it a fair relationship?
Well, just in the last month on Twitch, there's been a lot of backlash about Twitch reducing the amount of the split of money that top streamers will get on Twitch. As it used to be the case that most streamers would get a 50-50 or so rate, and then top streamers could negotiate for a slightly better rate, but that's now been changed, and that got quite a lot of backlash with people saying, "Hang on, Twitch is owned by Amazon, and that's owned by someone who's rich enough to pay for himself to go into space. I think they can afford to give a little bit more money to their streamers," So I think both. I think in the case of YouTube and in the case of Twitch, but particularly in the case of Twitch, both are essentially monopoly platforms for what they do. If you want to watch pre-recorded gaming videos, you go to YouTube, full stop. And that's not the case, for instance, in China. It's not the case, for instance, in a couple of other countries, but in most countries, if you watch gaming videos, you go to YouTube. If you want to watch gaming live streams, you go to Twitch. There's no real competitors in most countries for those two platforms. Right. And that, of course, gives those platforms a huge amount of power to basically make life slightly worse slowly but surely over time for people who work on those platforms, because there's no alternative to go elsewhere.
Can you not stream live over YouTube? Does YouTube?
You can stream live on YouTube, yes, but the number of people who do gaming streaming on YouTube is less than 1% of what's on Twitch, and probably less than 1% of 1%, I would wager. I would guess.
Are the people that do sponsor, are they aware of how much of what they're paying is going to the platforms versus the the streamers?
I think now more than ever there is a decent degree of awareness among fans and viewers, both on Twitch gaming and on YouTube gaming. I think there's a greater awareness now than there's ever been of the labor dynamics of what these platforms are doing. And just more broadly, like the fact that these are both multi-billion-dollar platforms just demonstrates by itself that people are being exploited because they don't get the full value from their money, because the platforms are reaping astonishing levels of income from the labor which people are doing on them. If you have people who are doing all this work and just about eking out a wage, but the fact that there's 10,000 or so people doing that means the platform is making billions, I think that is extremely exploitative.
Yeah, I definitely don't see it that way. I see, a company that had, this incredibly cool idea and created something new and gave people opportunities, and gets to take some sort of cut for that. And I think there's a question about how much of the cut is fair. But the fact that they get to make tons of money from this, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Whether it's 50%, maybe that's if that's a fair amount, I think is hard to kind of. I don't know if you need to measure it against the labor that people do, right? I mean, people are making a choice to kind of use this platform versus, doing other things that they could make money.
Absolutely, yeah.
That would be a lot less fun to do,
So you're saying there's a coolness tax. Like, I get to do a cool thing, therefore I should get taxed more by the people.
A Faustian bargain.
That's, by the way, I don't know. So I don't want to take a position on that because I think, but that's not what I mean. I mean, simply the fact that they make a lot more money than the people on their platform make, I don't think is itself a problem, regardless of the labor involved. Plus, also, again, I think the streamers benefit not just in terms of money, but in terms of a lot of other potential things. Especially the kind of celebrity status or fame status or appealing.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, that could also not be a benefit at all. And chasing fame is a stupid thing to do, generally speaking. And these are not the best values for anyone to have, as far as I'm concerned. And I am concerned that you're gamifying fame through something like Twitch. So I'm not all the way on board with this, but I also think that it's interesting that you could be rewarded in a bunch of different ways, and not all of them need to be financial. And maybe part of the cool tax might be that you do get these other benefits. At the same time, I don't know. It seems to me that if maybe 50-50 is fair, but at some point you got to say it's not fair, right? If it was 70-30 or 80-20, right?
At the point that that these Twitch celebrities start burning out, right? That's when it becomes unfair. That they can't.
But they're burning out. They're not burning out because of the financial scheme that because Twitter takes 50%. They're burning out because they want more and more and more higher celebrity, right? And because they want more and more users.
I don't think I would agree with you on that one. I think like the platform culture, the platform infrastructure, what people are expected to do, the extent to which the platform is taking money, the very strong lure of gaming celebrity and doing gaming as a job, which is reinforced and kind of discursively structured and presented by platforms like Twitch as something which should be a kind of aspirational goal. I think all those things matter, and I think in turn, and I did a piece on this a few years back. In turn, all this needs to be situated within a wider context of contracting job opportunities for young people in general. That it's increasingly hard to find long-term work. It's increasingly hard to find work that doesn't pay you a pittance or does not expect you to be on the back of a bike for 12 hours a day sending people pizzas. I don't think we can say that if someone wants to pursue Twitch and they do so and they suffer some negative effects, I think it's wrong to say that's entirely on that person, because they are working in a set of conditions, a set of issues, a global climate which encourages them significantly towards that because of the absence of secure, long-term, well-paying work, and because they perceive, quite rightly, that if they do, in air quotes, make it in this job, yes, there's a lot of labor and stress and so on demands, but you are still making your living playing video games on the internet, and in many ways that's pretty amazing. So I don't think we can put all responsibility on these people when they are within a system. Like, I think it goes back to what Marx once said, that and we made it 1 hour 20 minutes in before I bring up Marx, so that's quite good, I think. That people make their own choices, but in situations not of their own choosing. And that, I think, is the fundamental thing here, that yes, of course, people are choosing to go onto Twitch and may be choosing to put in the time and labor to try and make this into a job, but they didn't choose to be put into global economic and labor conditions where this seems appealing, or where the issues with their work on Twitch seem less than the issues they might have in other jobs.
Look, I mean, I definitely think that, again, when I was talking about the gamification of everything, right? I definitely think that there are some things here socially that are a really big deal, right? But, I also think that for many streamers, the choice is not a really poor job market. And, being pushed into this as a possibility. it simply looks awesome. I mean, they're lured by things that they want. But I think the situation is really complicated when it comes to assigning blame like that, and that I think free will is really complicated, and personal responsibility in the world where so much of where you are is a product of luck, and the society that you happen to be in, and the economic system that you happen to be in. I think those are really complicated questions. Mark, this has been fascinating all the way through. What do you want to leave our listeners with?
Twitch and YouTube have become massive new sites for people to make livings on, but also to kind of shape and mediate what gaming is and what gaming culture is and what matters in gaming and all these sorts of things. And there's, I think, a lot of good which these sites do, and there's a lot which people get from these in terms of culture, in terms of sociality in games, in terms of seeing games they might not be able to see, and all these sorts of things. But I don't think we can overlook that in terms of labor, in terms of sponsorships, in terms of what people are doing in their lives, in terms of the platforms, in terms of the economic and the entrepreneurial aspects here. I think there's a lot of key moral questions around what streamers are doing on these sites, how viewers are interacting on these sites, how the platforms treat people on their sites. I think this is a complex and very contested domain.
All right, Mark Johnson, well said. All right, guys, good podcast. Play nice, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Ethics in Video Games podcast. You can subscribe and listen to all of our episodes on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find us spreading ideas about ethics in video games on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and ethicsinvideogames.com. And if you want to help us with our mission, we'd love to have your support. You can sign up for a one-time or monthly donation on either our website or through the link in the episode notes wherever you listen to podcasts. We would also love to hear what you think about the issues we discussed in this episode. Hit us up at ethicsinvideogames.com, where you can contact Shlomo and Andy, comment on our episode, submit suggestions for future episodes and guests, and find a whole lot more information about ethics and video games at our Ethics Video Games Resource Center. Daniel Scher makes our music and art. Carmen Elena Mitchell is our producer and editor. Thanks again for listening and being a part of our show.